Every composition implies the character who utters the sentiments. We must therefore imagine this personage, and by connecting the probable qualities and circumstances which would give rise to such emotions, we may assign the degree of vehemence in the passion or peculiarity in the manner that must be the most natural. This is the personification as well as the poetry of the art. By endeavoring to recall any similar situation in which we ourselves may have been placed, by recollecting how such circumstances have affected persons of opposite characters, whom we may have seen under like influences, either real or imitative, we shall be directed both in the general and the particular operation of feeling. Richard Bacon, 1924.
Technique should be achieved to help you achieve your volition at the keyboard and allow for the creation of beauty. As Busoni said, one should play in a manner in which he is not only a virtuoso, but he is more than one. Technique should only be a means to an end, and if it harms what you hope to express, it should be discarded. What is the Taubman approach? In the 20th century, there were massive problems in piano playing. Piano teachers, with methods as dubious as the latter word in their title, led to massive injury in their students. Issues like tendinitis and focal dystonia led to the popularity of Dorothy Taubman, as she had found a new approach to piano pedagogy, which allowed for both the prevention and recuperation from the aforementioned injuries. This led to the emergence of a new school of thought, which emphasizes a technique free of tension, uses minimal movement, which are resounding positives. This proliferated online primarily by Edna Golansky and Robert Drousseau. The Taubman approach contains many interesting thoughts and ideas. However, it should not be accepted as a holistic ideology, as it contains many flaws, which will be highlighted herein.
Almost every comprehensive piano method has included the five fingers, their action, and their independence. I will list few of many. Clementi, Gradus ad Parnassum. Donani, Essential Finger Exercises. Busoni, Clavier Boom, Book 1. Czerny, Opus 740. Courteau, Rational Principles of Pianoforte Technique, Chapter 1. Even Debussy makes reference to this in his Etude for the Five Fingers. The development of the keyboard has been the taming of the action slowly over time. Firstly, the harpsichord and clavichord had very little resistance to push down. However, the first pianos required heavier action due to their nuance of tone and color. As the piano further advanced in these qualities over time, it also got heavier and heavier action. This led to the need for brilliance in the fingers to play the music of the past, which was made for lighter action. In addition, heavier action demanded the hand needed to be tamed across the fingers to have control over tone and contrapuntal passages, in which the hand contained more than one voice. So, when coming across these challenges, pedagogues came to a solution, which was these finger exercises which cultivated brilliance and finger independence in the fingers. There is a reason the cultivation of the fingers was almost always treated in the first part of all these methods we have looked at. This is because all other techniques must come after it. I will give some examples of recordings which demonstrate where adequate finger technique is imperative. What does the Taubman approach say about the cultivation of the fingers?
I would like to add that when we play softly and feeling control over the keys, the important thing is that we can't do it without the help of the forearm. When the fingers go down by themselves, they don't have enough weight. So what happened to overcome the surface of the key, the little bit of the weighted key, we have to go down a little bit faster when the fingers are isolated. That's one of the many problems of finger isolations. The fingers are not capable of doing that many things, and they need the parts that they're connected to do some of the jobs for them.
Again, I'm not saying all the excerpts above are examples of the fingers alone, as that would be foolish. However, they are only made possible because the fingers have been isolated. When Golonsky says they do not have enough weight, that is not because that is an inherent quality of the fingers, but because she hasn't properly conditioned them for great independence, like great methods of the past. This is not to say that the fingers must be trained in the sense of muscular exertion, but must instead be made independent and have the ability to move with rigor. How do pianists who use the Taubman approach fare against pianists of the past, which achieved what Golonsky says is impossible? It seems that this novel approach to pedagogy, which is distinct from every great pedagogue and great pianist in all of history, might be distinct not because it was beyond them, but because it is resoundingly below them. Through being unable to properly cultivate the fingers, these musicians have been relegated to the realm of sliding and muddiness, whereas through active fingers and active fingers alone can one achieve clarity in passages of brilliance. The Taubman approach is against stretching, as they think it causes excess tension. You can see that very readily in Goldansky's playing in this video. This is good, and in fact is really good if you consider the deficient training of many pianists, in which one is forced to make music harder than it has to be, due to excess strain and stressing. However, this is where truth ends and dogma begins. Goldansky takes the approach that all stretching is negative.
When we begin to work with people, the only way to take away the stretchiness between the fingers is to show the rotational movements, because what they do, they line up the finger, hand, and forearm, and the getting from finger to finger makes it possible, as the forearm is swinging rotationally, it makes it possible for the fingers not to have to open up, not to stretch, because stretching is one of the main reasons for tension and often for injury.
Yes, stretching can be bad. Yes, tension can come from stretching. However, to take such a dogmatic view comes in spite of all the great piano techniques, which could stretch in the proper manner free of tension. In addition, Taubman argues that you shouldn't use the fourth finger on black keys when playing octaves, due to the twisting it creates, which is bad as it doesn't allow the fingers to work with complete support of the forearm.
Much improved already. Much improved. Now, where were you just now? Now, let's take that again. Now, here. Yeah. Why take the fourth finger so you can make sure you twist? The fourth finger on a black key to go to a thumb, if you have an octave distance, is atrocious. The small amount of twisting that fourth finger creates, I would guess that half the pianists who are injured and crippled do so because they're using the fourth finger on the black key. I find that's one of the most common causes of injury. So take your 5 there, okay?
In making both these assertions, they stand against Chopin. For example, in his Etude Opus 25, number 10, in the A section, 5 and 4 are used in octaves to create legato, and in the B section, where excess legato is needed due to its lyrical nature, Chopin even uses 1 and 3. In fact, Chopin even writes an etude entirely about the twisting of the hands, in Opus 10, number 2. Here's Goldansky speaking about this etude.
The very immediate problem usually is that people, when they go over to the second note, they are twisting. They're going this way. Now, the moment you're twisting, you're breaking the alignment between the hand and the forearm, which is essential for a healthy techniques and a fluent technique. And also bringing the head to the extreme range of its motion. It simply hurts and makes it really impossible to go through the piece. It gets tighter and tighter. So the first thing that one has to discuss, and that's what I will concentrate on, is really what is the rotation? How do we move from finger to finger from interval to single note without twisting? And that is, it's a question of how to get the forearm right over the next note. So when we have here the chord, when we go to the third finger, it's what we call a double rotation. It's to the left. You release to the right to play to the left, but notice that my 4 and 5 are released. So I'm right over this finger the same way as if I started to play here. I would be this way. I'm moving between here. You see how my
Through trying to mitigate the problem of twisting, she lacks the legato, tempo, and dynamic marks present in the score when demonstrating, meaning that she chooses to follow her dogmatic ideology over following the sound that Chopin intended. Compare this to Cortot, who could follow every marking of Chopin, despite his transgression of twisting, described in the note of his edition on the etude. Cortot embraces the twisting, and learns how to navigate it correctly, and achieves the sound of Chopin. I appeal to the quote in the beginning. What good is a system that doesn't allow us to play Chopin in a way which keeps the character in 10-2 and 25-10, a problem which obviously Chopin himself had the solution to, as he put the tempo markings, dynamics, and legato in his score. Also, Taubman is against labor on the part of the pianist, but what about labor on the part of the listener? She plays in a laborious manner which gives every note an accent, stripping Chopin of his color. If Taubman was correct about the extent of harm caused by stretching, then why could Cortot play this etude in the incorrect manner, and yet never suffer any injuries during the entire duration of his career? This is because there is a manner to stretch and twist which is non-injurious. To stretch in a healthy way, you must let the muscles expand in a manner which feels easeful and not force a stretch. The same goes for twisting, and to dogmatically throw these concepts out because they can be harmful is equivalent to not using the sustain pedal because you might blur two harmonies. When demonstrating their approach, Taubman pianists leave much to be desired.
I'm moving between here. You see how my
Rotation is really magical because the rotation can bring us into the trill and it can bring us out of the trill. So you can see how the trill can work in the context of the whole. The keys themselves are giving you that feeling of riding. We call it riding the key.
Yeah.
So when we do this repeated notes, we're riding those keys.
I see this as a fundamental misunderstanding of difficulty. The Chopin is hard because of the tempo, which is ignored, and hard because of the legato, which is ignored, and it's hard because of the dynamic, which is, well, ignored. It's not hard because you have to play it according to the dogmatic principles of Taubman. The Bach-Goldberg is hard because you have to create texture, a melody and a trill in one hand, and to not play the top note melodic at all makes the passage much easier, which Trousseau does. The Gaspard isn't hard because you can grind it out at any dynamic, but hard because you have to create the leg in the pianissimo character in which the opening of Ondine exists. To ignore these things is to ignore the music. As I started the video, the purpose of the music isn't to simply play the music mechanically proficient, but instead to embody the character behind the music and contribute to beauty. The characteristic of a great artist is not that he is ignorant of technique, but that he forgets about it. Alfred Cortot.